So you have a Garmin inReach, but when is it okay to hit the SOS button? Well, Garmin just published a compilation of all of the inReach SOS data from 2023. It's their year in review for inReach. And what we can do is we can look at that data to tell us when people are hitting the SOS button and when it's okay for us to hit the SOS button. So let's dive into it. This first graph shows us what people are doing when they hit SOS. And as you'd imagine, most of this is outdoors based. What's interesting to me here is that there's a lot of vehicle-based driving, boating, motorcycle. So if you're driving your car and you're at a cell phone range and you get a flat tire, if you need help, if car breaks down, whatever it might be, you can hit SOS on here. Hitting SOS on an inReach doesn't necessarily equate to a backcountry rescue or helicopters coming in to get you. It could be as simple as, getting a tow truck. So carry this with you when you're in a vehicle. Why not? One of the interesting things they mentioned too is everyday reasons to get one of these. And recently here in the States, we had, I think it was about a day, a big AT&T cell phone outage. And people contacted me and they said, if I had an inReach, would I be able to communicate? And you would, absolutely. You can message inReach to inReach. There's a way to do that. Now, if you're messaging from your inReach to somebody who's part of the outage, obviously that's not going to work, but you can use this to message sort of off the grid, inReach to inReach. So a lot of good reasons to use it. I also have a friend who's a pilot, and a while ago he told me he carries this with him wherever he goes when he travels and everything, and I've been doing the same. So if you're traveling overseas and you don't feel comfortable or you're maybe not able to contact emergency services, you can do it here and you can get assistance from Garmin Response, which is the emergency coordination center, but they will be able to help you get an ambulance or get out of the situation you might be in. So it really pays just kind of to have this all the time, and that's what I do personally. Let's look at the next one. This is why people are hitting the button. And as you'd imagine, the big ones, medical issue and injury. If you get hurt on the trail, obviously you're going to have the ability to ask for help there. Same thing with pre-existing conditions. That doesn't sort of exempt you from being able to get help. If you need help and you have a medical emergency or some kind of medical situation, you can do it. Now, Garmin inReach is a two-way communicator. So even if you're not sure, maybe you have chest pains or something like that, if you're not sure, you can hit the SOS button, talk to Garmin Response via messages, and get an idea of what you should do or how you should handle the situation. So that's a really powerful aspect of this over something like a PLB, which is really just a one-way distress call. So for this, you can talk back and forth. And I know there's people out there who abuse it. People have a stomach ache or they're too tired. Use your common sense. You don't want to put people in danger to come and rescue you if you're just tired. But I know people do that. It happens with regular 911 in the French country too. It's not a reason to get rid of 911 or a reason to get rid of stuff like an inReach or SOS, but you need to use your common sense. And one of the best pieces of advice in all my years talking to people in the search and rescue industry came from the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department Search and Rescue. I asked them when people should be hitting their SOS button, and they gave me this guidance. They said, if you're unsure of a safe outcome, hit the SOS button. And it's great because it sort of deals with people of varying contexts, varying skill levels, right? If you're a doctor and you get a chest pain in your backcountry, you might know exactly what it is and you don't have to hit a SOS. But if you're somebody maybe who had a heart attack 10 years ago and you get a chest pain, it might be serious. So if you're unsure of a safe outcome, use the button, ask for help. And again, it doesn't always necessarily mean that you're going to get evacuated or get a helicopter. It could just mean getting some advice. One of the things Garmin points out in this report is 10% of the people who use this or hit the SOS button dealt with the situation themselves. And I'm glad Garmin called that out because, number one, there might not be resources to actually come save you, and the best course of action might be to self-evacuate, but that might be the most appropriate. And if we look here back on the graph, you see big chunks here stranded or stuck or lost. So, if you don't know where you're going, it's better maybe just to ask for help. They have your GPS position. Somebody at Garmin Response can point you in the right direction. There's a compass on a lot of these devices as well, but they might be able to get you back to safety without having to necessarily call in a helicopter and maybe without you exploring and getting stuck or getting cliffed out. So it's a two-way device. Use it, ask for help. It doesn't always mean you're going to get a helicopter. Let's look at the next one. Who is the SOS for? Less than half or just about half is self, but more than half is for other people. And there's a lot of confusion about that. You can think of an SOS on here as calling emergency services or 911 from the front country. If you were in your neighborhood and you saw somebody got hit by a car, you would call, in the States here, 911, and an ambulance would come, and you're a good Samaritan. It's the same thing with this. So just because you hit SOS for somebody else doesn't mean you're liable for that person necessarily. You're considered a good Samaritan. And that's, for me, another reason why I carry this, is not just to save myself, but, I could save somebody else's life. And for me, that's a big draw of having one of these things. One thing to note, if you have a Garmin inReach, and it's your personal inReach, and you've opted in to the search and rescue insurance, that insurance covers you. It doesn't cover other people. So they would need to get their own search and rescue insurance to cover any costs. We'll talk about costs at the end too. All right, let's look at the next one. All right, this is where it gets interesting. This is how people ultimately got rescued after hitting SOS. You'll notice that helicopter is not the majority, and I think this is a disconnect for a lot of people, maybe because of television and movies. I know a lot of people have the perception that there's search and rescue teams just waiting on call, almost like firemen. They get the alarm, they slide down the pole or whatever, and then they get onto a helicopter and they come and find you. It doesn't really work like that. Most search and rescues happen with the help of volunteers, usually at the leadership or organization of a sheriff's department or a park service. And it takes a while to mobilize that, get all the information together, and make sure that they're doing the right thing or handling the emergency the right way. That usually takes several hours, even if it is a helicopter. So be prepared to wait several hours in case there is an emergency. I always tell people, and I do this myself, I have enough in my day pack to stay the night. I'm not necessarily bringing a tent and a big sleeping bag, but I'll have an emergency sleeping sack. I'll have some extra layers, some extra food, and enough to let me stay comfortably overnight in case I have to wait overnight. There's a lot of factors that can come into play here, whether it's a helicopter or not, right? There's the weather, there's other search and rescues that might be happening, there's your situation. If there's two calls and somebody else has a more acute problem, that might be what happens first before yours. So be prepared to stay the night and have the essentials. If you want to see what I have in my emergency kit, just search for Hiking Guy, best hiking gear. I have all of that on a non-sponsored page on my website. You can check that out there. But if we come back here, some of the other things, self-rescue. I've seen situations where Garmin Response tells people to hike to another point where they'll be met by search and rescue people. Search and rescue, it could be, people on the ground, search and rescue team coming in with a litter, or, climbing down if you're cliffed out or stuck somewhere to come and rescue you off a cliff. It could also just be somebody coming to walk with you. I've been on Mount Whitney. People have called for altitude sickness, and a ranger just comes up and walks that person back down. So there's a variety of ways that this could all go down. One of the things that's a little bit of a gray area is how much all of this costs. Now, it could be $0. It could cost you $60,000. There's a lot of variability here, and a lot of it depends on how your rescue is handled, and a lot of that is totally out of your control. I just made a video on how much a rescue costs and what those variables are, and some strategies you can do in order to offset those costs if they do happen. Check that video out. I think it's also very helpful if you have an inReach and understanding what exactly to expect. Now, if you have any questions about this or any experiences personally, leave a comment. I'll do my best to answer them, and stay safe out there, and I'll see you out in the trails.